This is a hospitality business and things are going to happen. And when they do, if you just connect somebody human to human, it generally alleviates like 80% of the stress.
Property management at scale is about more than just rent rolls and maintenance calls. It's about protecting your assets, delivering stellar guest experiences, and scaling operations without losing quality. Welcome to Minute by Minute, the show where industry leaders share unfiltered stories, proven strategies, and real solutions for operating at scale. I'm your host, Nils Mattisson, CEO of Minut, and together we will dive deep into what it really takes to keep your properties safe, efficient, and protected. Let's get started.
Today we're excited to welcome Jeremy Werden, seasoned entrepreneur and investor who has revolutionized the short-term rental industry. Jeremy is the co-founder of BNBCalc, which is a cutting-edge SaaS platform that has become an essential tool for STR investors, helping them make data-driven decisions and scale their portfolios with ease. With over 25 properties in his portfolio and more than $1 million in revenue, Jeremy's journey from a private equity background to building a thriving short-term rental business is a testament to his strategic vision and relentless drive. Along with his impressive success in property investment, Jeremy is also an advocate for leveraging tech and automation to streamline operation and protect assets, making him one of the industry's leading voices. Jeremy, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Nils, man, the pleasure is all mine.
Let's start with your career shift, Jeremy. This really intrigued me. You made a huge transition from private equity to real estate investing. Can you talk us through that journey? What were sort of the things that spurred you on?
Yeah, so I'll go back. So I joined a private equity startup. It's kind of like quasi private equity. We were creating a new type of financial product. It was called a private equity access fund. It actually, now is a thing, but at that time, COVID hit. So I graduated college in 2019, and then March of 2020, our WeWork in West Soho was actually one of like the first hotspots for COVID in New York. And I left New York like a lot of other people and went home to North Carolina. At that time, the company I was working for, things slowed down in the sense where the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, was not looking at any new types of financial products. They pretty much put like a 1-year hiatus on things, and I was kind of sitting there, really not feeling like I was doing too much, and that's not the type of person that I am. Also, the fundraising situation got a little slower, and certain salaries were put on the chopping block, and I wanted to be able to kind of control my own destiny and do something during this time. So I was watching TV, like a lot of people, a lot of Netflix at that time, and I was looking for signs of something to do. And I don't know, are you familiar with like the TV show The Ozarks?
I am, yeah, and we have an employee actually who works out of there. So.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay, well, he's probably more familiar with it to meet that area than I am. But in the TV show, pretty early on, Marty Bird goes and buys a boat to launch a casino on Lake of the Ozarks. I did not do that. However, I did buy a boat in order to rent it out. So I kind of had an idea, somewhat of a hunch that boat rentals, would be a good opportunity. It was also a thing where I could still kind of do it was kind of like a side hustle back then in 2020. So I launched a boat rental business at a local lake in North Carolina. Things were going great. I mean, that was pretty much one of the only safe things you could do at that time. It was deemed like a essential activity. Like they closed down a lot of activities, but that one was not one that was closed down. So business was good, and a lot of the renters renting boats were buying lake houses. So they were renting a boat so they could go out and they could see their lake house or their prospective lake house. And got to talking with them, and they said, "Hey, we're thinking about renting this place. You seem like you know what you're doing with the rentals. Could you help us?" At the time, I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know there was, co-hosting or property management. I didn't know any vocabulary. I didn't know anything. I just said, "Sure, I can do that." And that first rental, I drove up. I did not live at the lake. I lived, probably 45 minutes, an hour from there. So I would, kind of be doing that commute over the weekend. And I drove up and dropped off the keys myself, handed it to the renters, and here we are several years later. So, I manage properties for homeowners, and early on, they would always ask me, how is this going to do? Like, how much is this going to make? And from there, what I would do is I would create reports. I would create documents, PowerPoints, spreadsheets to kind of show them, give them a little bit of an idea, and also show that I wasn't just going about this blindly. Like, I knew what I was doing. And those reports ended up becoming what BNBCalc is today. So I'll continue on the journey a little bit more. But yeah, went from managing, was seeing like, all right, these properties are making X and it costs Y to buy them. All right, I want in on the game. Like, I have a dream, like a lot of people probably play Monopoly as a kid. They have a dream of owning real estate. So at that time, I'd put my entire net worth into pontoon boats. So I needed to be creative in order to buy. So what I do, I put together more of these reports and sent these reports out to friends, friends of friends, friends of family, and started buying initially lake houses. But then, to this point, I bought houses in Florida, Kentucky, Wisconsin. So I've expanded beyond the lake. At this point, largely focused on like highly experiential properties. Have, bought properties, sold properties, got management clients, lost management clients, rented properties, leased them, given up my lease. Like, I've been through, life cycle of different properties, and I've kind of niched in at this point to like larger family reunion compounds, more like experiential properties. And then also on the software side of thing, these spreadsheets and PowerPoints that I initially was making in order to raise money, people were asking, can I buy your materials off you? And I would gladly oblige with that too. I'd say, sure. Find a little online store, sell them for whatever, 20, 25, 30, 50 bucks a pop. And from there, I was like, all right, I've made, this money selling spreadsheets. I know this spreadsheet's not very good. Like I know that there's a better way. I studied, CS in school. I was familiar with, the data providers. I was pulling from, 10 different places. I said, what if it could all just be in one place versus having to go to 10 places? Initially thought the tool would just like save myself a lot of time. And then, pretty quickly realized that other people were kind of in the same boat. So that's where BNBCalc was built about 3 years ago. And it's the idea is that you can just plug in an address and within seconds have a fairly comprehensive report for short-term as well as long-term rentals, whether it's a property you're buying, whether it's a property you're renting, whether it's a property you already own, whether it's a property that you're looking to, do the arbitrage model on. Instead of, pulling from 20 places, you can create materials and also get an idea yourself in a matter of seconds, and then click the share button, text it with a friend versus, hey, did you check your email? Hey, can you hop on a Zoom with me and click or walk me through how the cells are tabulated on the spreadsheet? So that was the idea. And we've been improving the product over the last 3 years and have, thousands of users. And at this point, I think we've done like over 1.5 million property analysis reports.
Now you started with a boat. I think there's a lot more entrepreneurs who start without a boat, and then once they sell their company, they end up buying one, more like a vehicle to get rid of money. But it sounds like you actually came into the market a little bit from curiosity, maybe a bit of happenstance. It sounded like in COVID. But now, having been in the industry for some time, like what are some of the things that you like about it and that made you stay?
Yeah, so at that time, a lot of my friends were getting into crypto. Like, they were big. Like, the smartest people I knew were allocating all their time and energy to like crypto. And I was like, look, if all the smartest people I know are really doing something like extremely untangible, and really, look, I'm not trying to get in an argument with anybody, but in my opinion, not really creating any like value for society, what can I do? If they zig, how do I zag? So I thought, all right, what's like the most like hands-on, experiential, like real world, touchable thing there is? Well, being on the water on a boat. And then from there, like family reunions, like that's real world stuff. And now, we're in the 2025 and I still believe in it because in-person real experiences is like what I wanted to do at that time. And it's cool now because, I have a passion for software and digital products as well. So I've kind of got to marry the two.
Like you now making available a lot more data than you yourself had when you first got into STR investing. Where do you think there are still inefficiencies in the market where there is an opportunity to make an outsized profit from your investment?
I mean, I would say there's a couple, I'm just going to say like a couple ways, a couple real opportunities that I see nowadays. One, I think a lot of people, they get into this game because they want income. They want cash flow. And I think that there was the thought maybe 5 years ago that you could just get any willy-nilly property, throw it on Airbnb, and like it'll make enough where you can quit your job. And I think there was honestly some truth to that. And I think it was cool that I got to like take my early swings at a time where, you didn't really have to do too much or be that good at your craft. But what I would say is nowadays, I mean, there's however many, the inventory of short-term rentals has blown up, which sure, on a buying side, and I'll get to like the opportunity buying properties in a little bit, but where I think there's just a lot of opportunity is, and it's not talked about enough, is just manage properties for other people. There are, in the continental United States, 7 million vacation houses, of which I think there's less than that, the number of Airbnbs. People don't realize that there's a lot more vacation houses that don't go rented, even that there are ones that do go rented. But if you can manage, 5 decent houses, you can have a pretty good life. If these houses are making $100,000 a piece, that's $500,000 a year. Put your 20% management fee on that. That's a 6-figure business by managing 5 properties. So like, you could in many ways just manage 5 properties and make the same cash flow or income even from buying 5 properties. So I think that's where there's one opportunity. There's a lot of like big property managers out there who manage thousands, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and they're just like not doing a good job. This game is a very localized, hands-on game. Doesn't mean you need to be there. I live in New York City. My properties aren't in New York City, but like I do care, So if the properties I manage, I do put care into them, even if I'm there or not. So that's where I think first opportunity is just managing properties or co-hosting. Airbnb has legitimized it by creating the co-host marketplace. They're trying to make it more and more of a thing. So I think that's something, the opportunity is just going to increase over time and is an incredible, yes, it's not a business that I believe that, a hyperscale business where you get to, $100 million in revenue in 2 years. But if your job is to like create good income and have a business that you can automate and sell, co-host property management businesses you can sell. I don't know. I haven't heard of anything else more enticing, to be completely honest.
There's a lot of people who go into the industry maybe expecting it to be a bit more of a passive investment, right? Like they might have some money in other asset classes, and here they see one where they can both get a second home, which of course has its own benefits. But then once you get into the property management aspect of it, you realize that it's not passive. Like it is definitely something where the more work you put in, the better the product. And of course, that's make it harder to scale. And I think we see that in the statistics as well, in terms of like you see unfortunately like a negative correlation between the scoring on Airbnb and how many properties a person or property manager is managing. But you've scaled quite successfully, and you have over 25 properties now. Can you talk about like some of the strategies that you've had from the early days that have helped you grow while maintaining quality?
Yeah, so I need to update that bio because I've actually a handful of apartments, and I actually recently gave them up. My lease ended. I didn't sell them. So I don't even know what the exact number is at this point. However, my revenue has continuously gone up. And I heard someone tell me this. My friend who manages like 130, he told me that the number one thing that leads to high reviews isn't the number of bedrooms or the type of property. It's like the quality of property. Like if you just start off with a higher quality property, you're probably going to get better reviews to begin with. So at this point, if I take on a property, like I don't take on something dumpy, but that is something that, it's kind of like the 80-20 rule where it's going to be 20% of your properties or cause you to 80% of your problems. So at this point, I've leaned in and focused again on just like nice, big properties that I've invested in, or the homeowners are willing to do what it takes to make sure that the guests have a great experience. So that's one, is just focusing on the inventory and the experience. Second, yeah, communication is key. I have a virtual team of assistants. I also leverage, all the softwares, property management softwares, AI tools, whatever it might be, to make sure that, our guests are attended to. And when there are issues, and there are going to be issues, we deal with them extremely fast. We try to get someone over there because there are going to be problems. It happens. But guests are generally understanding when you get someone over there to take care of the problem. And then number two, you need to have systems in place where you find the problems before the guests do. I am not going to be able to inspect the house in between each turnover. That's just not realistic. I'd have to hop on a plane and fly wherever. That's not going to happen. But I have team members who have been trained on what to look for.
You were actually the second person in just a couple of days here that talks about going from like a higher number of listings and then deciding to focus on the ones that actually generate most of the profit. I was speaking to a property manager they're in France, but we met in Italy, and they had gone down from 400 to 200 while maintaining the same profit level, by putting more work into the ones where they had that sort of differentiation compared to the larger companies and hotels, etc., and really like focus on those type of experiences that you're talking about with family. So I like that, and I think there's something with the industry evolving in that direction as well, where the days of a maybe affordable vacation rental that you get as somewhere to stay instead of in a motel or a hotel, that's not really a compelling business. But these types of properties that you can't really get access to in any other way than a boutique property manager, that seems to be where business is booming and where the margins are good. So can you talk about so you have these in a very distributed portfolio, really, like talking about Wisconsin, New York, etc. Like, what does your team structure look like? What do you have to support you in this?
I build out the team. And the way we have it structured is I have a couple full-time virtual assistants. It's their job to deal with guest communication, maintenance, pretty much just everything that you can do from the computer. I do like to craft the listings or have a hand in like creating the properties. That's what I like to focus on, is like new properties, scouting out, finding new opportunities, and then also the design, the amenities. We have local teams. So on the lake where I started, we have a husband and wife crew. They take care of the boats. And I believe we manage 7 properties on that lake. So they hold down the fort there. And then in each location, we only have a couple locations where we have one property. I like to build scale. And in the locations where we've kind of had one-off properties, those have been ones that have been easier to part ways with. So we have the local team, and then, we generally have kind of an all-purpose guy. And then obviously when we have to call in specialists, my virtual assistants will hammer Google, Thumbtack, references, database of local vendors who we've worked with.
And you spoke about automation earlier. What's the guiding principle around when to hire a person or when to sort of invest in the tooling or automation to run your company?
Yeah, so I don't like to overly automate things. I mean, I do believe, again, this is hospitality. This is a high-touch business. There are times, for example, this summer where unfortunately we had flooding at that lake where we have the 7 boats, these 7 houses. And I did not talk to every guest over the phone. I was in Europe, but I talked to most of them. So when something happened, sure, could have sent some automated messaging about, oh, by the way, there was a flood. Heads up, the lake's kind of, might be off access by the time you got there. But I tried, and I wasn't perfect, but at that time it was, July is our biggest month of the year, August too. And obviously if guests are getting there and things that they don't expect ahead of time, they're going to be mad. Our reviews are going to tank. So in that time, I just picked up the phone and I tried to call everybody. I did not get everybody. I don't want a couple people who I didn't talk to, their phone numbers didn't work, or I don't know. The reservation came in. I was in Europe. I wasn't perfect, but I tried to talk to everybody. And that's an example. Like, this is a hospitality business and things are going to happen. And when they do, if you just connect somebody human to human, it generally alleviates like 80% of the stress.
We hear from a lot of clients as well, where it's important to have tech and automation, but then you need to escalate to a human in some circumstances. And of course, if you automate the basics in a way, you sort of have time to go the extra mile when a lake floods or something very, very unexpected happens. Can you talk about what you have automated and where in your journey you decided to take different steps?
Yeah. So initially I started with I think I actually used Verbo before I used Airbnb. I might be the only one who did that. But I actually knew of Verbo even before I knew of Airbnb. So I think I started with just Verbo, and then whatever, that's fine enough. You log in there, easy enough. Then you add Airbnb, and then you're like, wait a minute, it's kind of annoying to have to manually go block the calendars from each other. That's where you get a property management or a channel manager. So at that time, I integrated with Hospitable, which at that time was a channel manager tool. Now it's a full-blown like property management software. I actually just invested in them today. They're great. I've had a lot of feedback over the years, and most of the things I've requested, they've actually done, which I, as a software guy myself, I find awesome.
Great team behind Hospitable.
Exactly. Shout out. And the fact that they're raising money from their customers and not, VCs is pretty neat. So started with them. At that time, I looked at the pricing softwares, but they just didn't have enough data on, this rural location. And I started kind of like automating the prices myself, like where I would change them myself and, adjust weekends, adjust weekdays. And then I realized over time that I was like, oh, the pricing software is like learning from me because they started pricing like my pricing. And I was like, all right, I guess I could start using this now. So I picked up pricing software not too long after. Those are really the two main things. Beyond that, you need a team. So if, supplies you need to order supplies. Well, Walmart.com and can get that to you in 2 hours, or Amazon.com can probably get it to you next day. So that right there is Amazon, Walmart, property management software, pricing tools. That gets you like 90% there. But then the virtual team members get you the other 10%. I did have apartments and in a building, and noise was obviously hugely impactful, especially when there's, other people there and a landlord, and the landlord can like kick you out if there are issues. So we did have Minut. We did have Minut at these apartments and worked great. We did, as I mentioned earlier, we did recently give up the apartments, but definitely came in handy, especially for that use case.
Some of the other use cases like the crowd detection or the water leak detection or one of the other features in the suite.
I guess there really wasn't ever issues. We've had parties at different places. Like when there's a party, there's like 40 cars up front. Like that's kind of the main determiner or issue. If it's an apartment, it can be like 10 people and they're parked like down the street or something. But when it's a house party, you kind of just look at the front, the driveway camera, and you're like, all right, there's 40 cars here, like we're having an issue. I did not know about the leak detection aspect. That's pretty nifty. Is that new, or you guys had that the whole time?
It came out maybe 6 months ago, so I'm not sure if we would have had it in time for your lake to flood. But for next time it happens.
Hey, we got notified of that one. Trust me, I was actually on the last day of my bachelor party, and woke up to like guests and team members. Rightfully, I was seeing pictures and I thought it was the end of the world. My heart dropped.
Kudos for waking up. I'm not sure if I would have.
I had to leave too. It was the last day. We had like a 7-hour, we had a ferry and a 6-hour drive ahead of us. Yeah, it was not my favorite road trip on the way back. Had a good time on the way there.
If we think about how short-term rentals differ from traditional rentals or hotels, and especially in relation to operations and guest relationships. What do you think that these more traditional models can learn from the short-term rental market?
The short-term rental market, you just have vastly differentiated product. Whereas hotels, say they're more, sure, you have a spa in one, and one's a 3-star hotel versus a 4-star versus a 5-star. But there's such a range in in Airbnbs. I mean, the Airbnb highlights unique properties. They let you filter by 200 different types of experiences. So yeah, I would say maybe pull from, there's just people, I think, doing more things there's out there with short-term rentals, and you can apply different ideas to a hotel.
Yeah, there are very few hotels that sort of become the destination. But I do think with vacation rentals, you often start by picking the house and then working your way with flights and cars, etc. Afterwards. And that's quite unique. But that also brings in a bit more risk, right? Like when you have a unique property and something happens and you have a guest showing up, right? Like if it's a hotel and something happens in one room, you can just put them in another. Whereas that's much harder where in a portfolio where every property is unique. What are some of the things you're putting in place to avoid or make sure that you're resilient in the face of these types of challenges?
Yeah, so I mean, on like in terms of not having guest-related issues?
Yeah, or rather like sort of what are fallback plans in case there is that flooding and you're not going to be able to welcome a guest in. Like, do you have any sort of plan B for when things go wrong, or is it more about being proactive and reaching out to the guest and explaining what's happened? Like what sort of safeguards are you putting into place in your business?
Yeah, be proactive with guests and then be resilient. For example, just in the past year and some change, we had terrible hurricanes hit Western North Carolina. Our property was actually, fortunately we didn't even lose power, but 10 minutes away, the town flooded pretty bad. That being said, Airbnb at that time allowed guests to cancel their reservations, no questions asked, for the next month. We did tell our guests, hey, heads up, we actually have no issues, and we don't know exactly where you're coming from, but the roads around the property are accessible. Still, guests canceled. Nothing really we could do about that. Some people did rebook. However, Kentucky, we have a property there. They had historic flooding in the spring. We had a couple issues from that that we had to deal with. It was what it was. This summer, the lake, where a good chunk of the portfolio or the original portfolio is there. They had historic flooding. Most it had ever flooded was 11 feet. It went up to like 17, 18 feet. You had entire docks that were like picked up and by the boats and floating down the lake. Fortunately, we had a little chunk of a dock that got picked up, but fortunately our boats were off the lake. If our boats were on the lake and under the docks, that would have been terrible. But yeah, in that instance, Airbnb actually didn't cancel any reservations because it wasn't deemed a natural disaster. It was the lake flooded, but like the towns didn't, like the roads were fine. It was just the lake itself wasn't fine. So in that case, we had to obviously level set expectations. They said, hey, you can't swim in the lake for further notice. We told guests that. We were like, is there boats coming around? Like, they're going to arrest you if you jump in the lake? I don't know. I can't tell you that. Is the lake safe? I think so, but I'm not, I can't guarantee anything to you, but we're just going to inform you of what's going on. And in the case, most of them were understanding and said, we're going to come, we're going to make the best of it. And I said, sweet. We'll give you guys we'll give you guys some money to go do go-karting and go to the winery. Just do the local activities. Like if you can't use the lake amenities, we want to contribute to other activities. But yeah, some guests were not as understanding. And in that case, you try to, be reasonable, hope that they're reasonable, and come to a fair solution.
So we spoke about differentiation as a theme that you're investing in here, where each property is quite unique and feels like a specific niche in the market. And now we're talking about resilience. Is there another sort of guiding principle that you have when you decide what to invest in and not?
Definitely, I have my buy box has definitely changed over times. I mean, I look for things that can't be recreated. If I'm like, hey, this house looks great, but then I'm like, well, then the four neighbors to it can all do the same thing, I'm a little worried. You know, people talk about saturation. It's definitely a thing, like no doubt about it. You know, we bought a couple 4-bed, 2 or 3 bath houses in Florida, put in tiki huts, like made them nice, but so did 10,000 other people. You know, like there's so many 4-bed, 3-bathroom properties in Florida with a pool that, you know, are nice. So I try to look for things that, like, for instance, we bought in Kentucky a house with its own private lake, like its own private 5-acre lake. It has a barn with a 3,000 square foot insulated pole barn. So the thought was, all right, I don't really see anyone else doing this anywhere else, or the cost to even build this nowadays would probably be a couple $1,000,000. If I don't even know how you build a lake, like a 5-acre lake. I haven't gotten a quote on that front. So every new project I do, I'm really like, all right, why is this something that like nobody else could do, or maybe like 1 or 2 other people in this area could do, if even.
And as you look into the future, do you think those trends will continue, or are there forces that are changing hospitality and property management over the next 5 or 10 years, say?
The tax benefits in the US are, you know, I think if you looked at supply and demand, supply increased drastically during COVID. It corresponded with just the amount of new property purchases there were. I mean, just a lot of low interest rates. People were just buying houses for all types of different reasons. Then interest rates went up, home prices went up, and new inventory slowed down. People stopped buying. And then they are familiar with like the tax, the big beautiful bill back in July. But the US passed a tax bill that made it very beneficial to buy real estate because you can take advantage of bonus depreciation. And there's something called the short-term loophole, which allows you to offset that depreciation against your active or W-2 income. So, and BNBCalc, for example, has a bonus depreciation calculator. You know, we have a lot of realtors using to show their clients the benefits of buying, accountants using to show their clients, individual investors using. So definitely would, if you're an American looking to buy in the US, but definitely check out our tax calculator. So I think a lot of people are, I don't know, I mean, the jury's still out in the data, but I'm seeing a lot of people active in buying, and a lot of them are buying like largely to get into the game, but also to save on their taxes. So it'll be interesting to see if that like affects supply. I think a lot of people are selling like turnkey rental properties because there are these buyers coming in who just want to buy largely to like help their tax bill. So I don't know, that's something I'm starting to see is kind of like turnkey short-term rental purchases and sales.
So in layman's terms, you would buy a property and then you would depreciate that asset and offset that against your regular income.
Yeah. So if you make $250,000 a year and you buy $1 million house, you might only have to put $100,000 down, you know, to do a second home loan. You put $100,000 in, take on $900K debt. However, that asset you can show, this isn't exact math, not an accountant, but very, might be able to show $250,000 loss from depreciation. So let's say your job, you made $250,000 from buying a house, you lost $250,000. Bang. Your tax bill just went sayonara.
I hope our dear leaders are speaking, because I think we could use some of this in the UK.
America, we like our real estate investors. That's something we encourage or help out, evidently.
Now that you've been in the industry for a few years here, like what is the advice that you would give yourself when you had first started out?
You know, focus on these areas and these types of properties and hammer that, because I learned some things the hard way. For sure.
Yeah, there's always the benefit of hindsight.
And I'm not saying, yeah, exactly. I mean, I would have done things on a one by one basis, maybe made different decisions, but honestly, I can't look back and be like I did anything wrong. Doing the property management really, I mean, enabled me to go full time, which, people talk about like that freedom, that cliche quote unquote freedom, but it really did give me the means of doing other things. Wanted to launch a software business in general. Wasn't going to do it or not do it, but, an opportunity, saw a need in the market and went for it. Was with my girlfriend, or a friend at the time, would travel with me to help set up properties, became my girlfriend, who became my wife. So things evolved. She launched her own media business, and I was able to allocate time to helping her, which I probably would not have been able to if, I had to go into the office every day. So no regrets.
No, of course. With that kind of outcome, I think the business is maybe the least important.
Hey, we're not there yet. We got to keep going. A lot to do.
Been great to have you, Jeremy. Is there anything we forgot to ask you that we should have?
If you guys want to continue following my journey, you can look me up Instagram, Jeremy Werden, LinkedIn, Jeremy Werden, Twitter as well. I've started being a little bit active on there. And then, if you guys want to try out BNBCalc, that would be great. 7-day free trial. Like it, use it. Don't like it, it's all good. No harm, no foul, either way. But we'd love your guys' feedback and love, folk listening to become a part of our community and our journey as well.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Nils, for having me.
Thank you for listening to Minute by Minute. If today's episode gave you fresh insight, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Share this episode with your team and follow us on social media to continue the conversation and exchange your own operational stories. To learn more about privacy-first property protection, visit minut.com. Until next time, make every minute count to maintain your property's safety.